You stand in the frigid halls of Westminster Abbey, 1396, breath misting in the autumn chill, clutching a prayer book as servants rush past, whispering of a royal wedding unlike any before. The oak doors groan open, revealing King Richard II, 29, golden hair catching stained glass light, regal and imposing. Beside him, a tiny figure barely reaches his elbow, her hand lost in his gloved palm. She's 6, maybe 7, drowning in a French gown, pearls heavy in her braided hair. Isabella of Valois, daughter of France's king, is England's new queen. Your heart lurches as you steady yourself against the altar. Medieval marriages often bound young brides, 12 or 13, but this child, her curious eyes scanning the Gothic arches, feels like a violation of nature itself. Richard's vows are gentle, almost fatherly, promising protection, not passion. The marriage won't be consummated. She'll grow up in England's court, a diplomatic pawn to seal peace with France. Yet as you bless their union, a chill grips you. What fate awaits this child in the brutal chessboard of royal power? This was no anomaly, but a calculated move in a world where children were currency. Isabella's marriage to Richard II was a desperate bid to end the 100 Years' War, a conflict that bled England and France dry. Behind the pomp of crowns and treaties, a darker truth festered. Elites used innocence to cement power, cloaking ambition in divine rituals. Religion sanctified these unions, priests invoking God to bind a child to a king, while royalty hid the human cost. Suppressed chronicles reveal countless such stories, young lives traded, their voices silenced to preserve thrones. You're stepping into forbidden history now, where power's corruption stains every vow and knowledge once gained haunts forever. If you dare to uncover these buried truths, strike that like button to pledge your journey, subscribe to Face the Shadows and comment below where you're watching from. Let's unite across time, bound by this dangerous curiosity. Isabella's story began in Paris, 1389, born to a mad king and a calculating queen. Charles VI's insanity, believing himself glass, shattering in fits, cast a shadow over her childhood. Her mother, Isabel of Bavaria, saw her as a political asset, a pawn to secure France's survival. At 6, Isabella was bartered to England, her dolls traded for a crown, her fate sealed in secret councils. The journey across the Channel was a child's nightmare. Alone, surrounded by strangers, her small hands clutching a treaty's weight. In England, she was a spectacle, a child queen paraded to prove peace, while nobles whispered of her fragility and the king's motives. This was the medieval world, beauty and youth sacrificed for power, truths buried to protect the elite. Isabella's tiny feet tread the cold stones of Calais Castle, 1396, her golden gown dragging, heavy with pearls that seem to mock her fragility. At 7, she stands before Richard II, his gentle smile belying the weight of the moment. The first wedding, intimate, binds her to England in a hall echoing with French and English vows. She doesn't understand the words, peace, truce, dowry, but feels their burden in the noble's stares. Her small hand trembles as she takes the ring, a symbol not of love but of a kingdom's survival. The 100 Years' War has ravaged both nations, villages burned, treasuries drained. This child, a living treaty, is the price of peace. Richard kneels to her level, his kindness a fleeting comfort in a world where power devours innocence. You watch, a priest, heart heavy, knowing this union, blessed by God, sealed by men, carries a darker truth. Medieval Europe thrived on such sacrifices. Elites bartered children like Isabella to forge alliances, their youth a currency for thrones. Religion was their tool. Priests invoked divine will to sanctify child marriages, claiming God ordained these bonds to unite kingdoms. The church, fattened by royal gold, turned a blind eye to the human cost, its rituals masking the exploitation of the vulnerable. Suppressed chronicles whisper of countless girls, some younger than Isabella, wed to men decades older, their lives erased from history to protect dynasties. Kings and nobles wove a web of power, using innocence to cement their rule, while clergy preached submission as salvation. The psychological toll on these children was profound, their minds shaped to accept their role, their voices silenced by divine decree. Isabella's journey to England was a descent into isolation. Torn from her mother's arms, she sailed across a stormy channel, surrounded by strangers who saw her as a diplomatic asset. In London, crowds gawked at the child queen, their cheers a hollow mask for the court's calculations. Richard housed her in Westminster, her apartments a gilded cage. Her days were filled with lessons, English, etiquette, obedience, molding her into a symbol of peace. Yet whispers of dissent followed. Nobles question Richard's motives, some seeing weakness in his choice of a child bride. The psychological control began early, her French attendants coaching her to smile, to please, to bury fear. This was no fairy tale but a brutal game where a girl's life was a pawn, and truth was the first casualty. Westminster's halls gleam with torchlight, but their warmth never reaches you. Isabella, now 8, navigates the court's labyrinth, her small frame dwarfed by towering nobles and silks. Their smiles hide calculations, her presence secures peace but also power. Richard visits often, his gifts of books and birds a paternal facade, yet his eyes betray distraction, haunted by enemies within. You, a priest, watch her learn English phrases, her voice soft but precise, a child forced to grow faster than her years. The coronation, a spectacle of roses and fleur-de-lis, crowns her queen at 7, the crowd's cheers drowning her uncertainty. She waves as taught, but her dark eyes search for meaning in a world that sees her as a tool. The feast lasts days, jugglers and minstrels masking the court's unease. Richard's peace with France divides his nobles, some whispering of betrayal. This was the medieval elite's art, using children to bind kingdoms while cloaking ambition in divine ritual. Isabella's marriage was a masterpiece of diplomacy, her youth a symbol of renewal but at a cost. The church played its part, priests like you blessing unions that traded innocence for power, citing God's will to silence doubts. Suppressed records reveal a pattern. Child brides offered to kings, their lives erased to preserve royal legacies. Religion was a weapon. Masses and hymns framed these marriages as sacred, while behind closed doors, nobles bartered flesh for gold and truces. The psychological manipulation was relentless, shaping girls like Isabella to accept their fate, their minds molded by tutors and clergy into compliance. Isabella's days are a study in control. Mornings, lessons in courtly grace, her small hands learning to embroider loyalty. Afternoons, history tracing bloodlines that justify her chains. Evenings, banquets where she sits, a doll-like queen, while nobles toast her role in peace. Her French attendants whisper of her father's madness, urging her to be England's hope, but fear lingers in their eyes. Richard's court is fracturing. Some nobles see her as a foreign threat, others a bargaining chip. Psychological chains tighten. Praise for obedience, silence for questions. Whispers of rebellion among servants are crushed, their fates a warning. The truth, buried in burned scrolls, reveals a system where innocence was currency, and power's corruption stained every crown. The scent of wax and incense fills Isabella's chambers, a fragile sanctuary in Westminster's stone maze. At 8 she sits, practicing English under a tutor's stern gaze, her French accent softening but never gone. Richard's visits grow rarer, his once kind eyes now shadowed by unseen threats. You, a priest, overhear nobles muttering. Richard's peace with France weakens his throne, they say, and Isabella, the child queen, is a symbol of his softness. Her coronation feast echoes in memory, 3 days of opulence hiding courtly tensions. She was paraded, a living treaty, her smile forced as crowds cheered for a peace they didn't trust. Now she navigates court with eerie poise, her small hands clutching books of English history, learning the names of kings whose blood feuds shaped her fate. Each lesson is a chain binding her to a role she barely grasps. Medieval elites mastered this game, trading children like Isabella to secure power, their innocence a tool for dynastic ambition. The church was their ally, sanctifying child marriages with prayers and incense, claiming divine approval for acts that broke spirits. Suppressed chronicles, hidden in monastic vaults, tell of girls wed at 6 or 7, their lives erased to protect royal secrets. Priests, bribed by gold, preached that such unions honored God, while nobles used them to forge alliances or end wars. The psychological toll was calculated. Young brides were molded into symbols, their minds shaped to accept sacrifice as duty. Religion cloaked the horror, its rituals a velvet glove over power's iron fist. Isabella's life is a gilded prison. Dawn brings lessons in etiquette, her movements drilled to please a court that watches her every step. Midday, Latin prayers, her voice echoing in chapels where God feels absent. Evenings, banquets where she sits, silent as nobles debate her worth. Her French ladies whisper of her father's worsening madness, urging her to embody peace, but their fear betrays the truth, England's stability frays. Psychological control deepens. Richard praises her obedience, but his distracted gaze hints at coming storms. Whispers of noble discontent grow, some call her a foreign pawn, others a liability. The truth, buried in lost records, reveals a system where children were sacrificed, their suffering a currency for thrones and divine favor. Shadows lengthen in Westminster's corridors, where Isabella, now 9, moves like a ghost among scheming nobles. Her chambers, once bright with Richard's gifts, feel colder, their tapestries heavy with unspoken dread. You, a priest, see her clutch a doll from France, a relic of a childhood stolen. Richard's visits are fleeting, his face etched with worry as rumors of rebellion swirl. He speaks to her of English kings, their triumphs and betrayals, as if preparing her for a storm she can't yet see. Her dark eyes, once curious, now hold a flicker of fear, sensing the court's shifting tides. Nobles watch her with calculating gazes, some seeing a child to protect, others a pawn to exploit. The peace she embodies frays, her presence a reminder of a treaty many resent. This was the medieval world's dark heart. Children like Isabella bartered for power, their lives currency in a game of thrones. The church wove divine lies, priests blessing child marriages as sacred bonds, their altars hiding the truth of broken spirits. Suppressed records, burned manuscripts, silenced chroniclers, reveal countless girls wed to men thrice their age, their names erased to shield royal sins. Religion was a tool of control, its rituals sanctifying exploitation while nobles traded innocence for alliances. The psychological warfare was relentless. Young brides taught to see their suffering as duty, their minds molded by clergy. And courtiers into submission. Power's corruption ran deep, elites cloaking ambition in divine will, their thrones built on silenced cries. Isabella's days are a delicate dance. Mornings, lessons in music, her lyre's notes a fragile shield against fear. Afternoons, courtly duties, her small frame bowing to nobles who whisper behind her back. Evenings, silent meals, her French attendants guarding secrets of a fracturing court. Richard's kindness, once a comfort, now feels like a fading promise, his attention torn by unseen enemies. Psychological chains bind her. Praise for compliance, isolation for questions. A servant's whispered rebellion is crushed, his execution a public warning. The truth, buried in vanished scrolls, reveals a system where children were pawns, their suffering a sacred offering to gods and kings who demanded loyalty above humanity. The air in Isabella's chambers grows heavy, the scent of lavender and wax masking a creeping dread. At 9, she navigates Westminster's halls with a queen's poise, but her small hands tremble when alone. Richard's visits are scarce, his once warm smiles replaced by a haunted gaze. You, a priest, hear whispers of noble unrest. Richard's peace with France, sealed by this child, is called cowardice by those craving war. Isabella senses it, her dark eyes catching sidelong glances from courtiers who see her as a foreign intruder. Her French ladies coach her to smile, to charm, but their hushed tones betray fear. England's court is a powder keg and she's its fragile spark. The coronation's grandeur fades, replaced by a reality where her youth is both shield and shackle. Medieval elites perfected this cruelty, using children like Isabella to bind kingdoms while hiding the cost. The church was their accomplice, priests like you invoking God to bless unions that stole childhoods, their prayers a veneer for exploitation. Suppressed chronicles, lost to fire and time, tell of girls wed at 6, their lives erased to protect dynastic pride. Religion twisted innocence into sacrifice, its rituals, masses, blessings, masking the truth of broken spirits. Nobles traded young brides for power, their thrones built on psychological control. Children taught to see their pain as divine duty, their voices silenced by divine decree. The elite's corruption was absolute, their gods as merciless as their ambition. Isabella's life is a tightening noose. Dawn, lessons in English history, tales of conquest shaping her into a symbol. Midday, prayers in a chapel where candles flicker like her fading hope. Evenings, banquets where she sits, a silent queen, while nobles debate her worth. Her French attendants whisper of her father's madness, urging her to embody peace, but their fear mirrors hers. Richard's grip weakens. Psychological chains deepen, praise for silence, punishment for curiosity. A servant's defiance, crushed by exile, warns of resistance's cost. The truth, buried in destroyed records, reveals a system where children were currency, their suffering a sacred right to appease gods and kings, their lives a footnote in a history written by the powerful. Torchlight flickers in Isabella's chambers, casting shadows that dance like specters of her stolen childhood. At 9 she sits, embroidering under a French lady's watchful eye, her needle pricking skin as often as cloth. Richard's absence grows, his once frequent visits now rare, his face gaunt with unspoken fears. You, a priest, hear nobles' whispers. Richard's peace with France, embodied by this child, fuels their rebellion. Isabella's dark eyes catch their glances, sensing her role as both prize and prisoner. Her coronation, a distant memory of roses and cheers, feels like a lie against the court's growing tension. She's a queen yet powerless, her youth a chain in a game where kings and gods demand sacrifice. The air hums with betrayal, and you wonder how long her fragile world will hold. This was medieval power's dark core. Children like Isabella traded for thrones, their innocence fuel for ambition. The church wove divine lies, priests blessing child marriages as God's will, their altars hiding broken lives. Suppressed chronicles, burned to ash, speak of girls wed to men decades older, their names erased to shield royal sins. Religion was a weapon, its rituals sanctifying exploitation, clergy preaching submission as salvation. Nobles used young brides to forge alliances, their psychological control crushing spirits. Children taught to see suffering as duty. The elite's corruption ran deep, their gods complicit in a system where innocence was currency, and truth was buried to protect power. Isabella's days are a delicate prison. Mornings, lessons in courtly grace, her movements molded to please. Afternoons, Latin prayers, her voice echoing in a chapel where God feels absent. Evenings, banquets where she sits, a symbol of peace while nobles plot war. Her French ladies urge silence, their fear mirroring hers. Richard's throne trembles. Psychological chains tighten. Praise for obedience, isolation for questions. A servant's rebellion, crushed by execution, silences hope. You've descended into this abyss now, bearer of forbidden truths. To lock in this transformation, to join those who see history's shadows, comment, unveiled secrets twice below, a ritual to bind you to this knowledge. The truth, hidden in lost records, reveals a world where children were pawns, their suffering a sacred offering to gods and kings. The scent of damp stone clings to Isabella's tower chambers, 1399, where she's confined as England's court unravels. At 10, her small hands clutch a French prayer book, its pages worn from desperate pleas. Richard's visits have stopped, his throne stolen by whispers of rebellion. You, a priest, hear the court's pulse. Nobles defecting to Henry Bolingbroke, Richard's cousin, who eyes the crown. Isabella's French ladies whisper of her father's madness, urging her to remain poised, but their eyes betray panic. She's no longer a queen but a political pawn, her youth a liability in a kingdom fracturing. The tower's barred windows mock her title, her coronation's cheers a distant echo. She senses the danger, her dark eyes scanning for allies in a court turned hostile. Medieval elites thrived on such betrayals, using children like Isabella to secure power, then discarding them when thrones shifted. The church was complicit, priests like you blessing child marriages as divine, their rituals masking the theft of innocence. Suppressed chronicles, hidden in monastic vaults, tell of girls wed young, their lives erased to protect royal legacies. Religion was a tool, its masses sanctifying exploitation, clergy preaching submission to crush spirits. Nobles traded young brides for alliances, their psychological control relentless. Children molded to accept their role, their pain framed as divine duty. The elite's corruption was a machine, grinding innocence into power, their gods silent as graves. Isabella's days are a tightening noose. Dawn, lessons in silence, her voice stifled to avoid offense. Midday, prayers in a chapel where candles flicker like her fading hope. Evenings, guarded meals, her French attendants shielding her from hostile whispers. Henry's men watch her, their livery a red rose of threat. Psychological chains bind her. Praise for compliance, isolation for defiance. A servant's whispered revolt, crushed by exile, warns of resistance's cost. The truth, buried in burned scrolls, reveals a system where children were currency, their suffering a sacred right to appease gods and kings. Isabella's role as pieces. Symbol phrase, her fate tied to a usurper's ambition, her childhood a casualty of power's relentless hunger. The tower's walls close in, their damp stones a prison for Isabella's fading dreams. At 10 she sits, her small frame dwarfed by a chair meant for queens, her French prayer book a lifeline to a home she'll never see. Henry Bolingbroke's men guard her door, their red rose livery a constant threat. Richard, her protector, is gone, deposed, perhaps dead, his fate a whispered rumor. You, a priest, see her eyes, once bright with curiosity, now dulled by fear. Her French ladies coach her to curtsy, to speak softly, but their trembling hands betray the truth. England's court is a battlefield, and she's its youngest casualty. The coronation's grandeur, the roses and cheers, feels like a cruel jest against her barred windows and guarded life. Medieval power was built on such sacrifices. Children like Isabella bartered for thrones, their innocence fuel for ambition. The church was their enabler, priests blessing child marriages as divine mandates, their altars hiding broken spirits. Suppressed chronicles, lost to time, reveal girls wed at 6 or 7, their names erased to protect dynastic pride. Religion twisted innocence into sacrifice, its rituals, masses, blessings, masking exploitation. Nobles used young brides to forge alliances, their psychological control crushing minds. Children taught to see pain as duty, their voices silenced by divine decree. The elite's corruption was absolute, their gods complicit in a system where innocence was currency, and truth buried to shield power. Isabella's life is a delicate balance. Mornings, lessons in obedience, her words shaped to please a hostile court. Afternoons, prayers in a chapel where God feels absent, her faith fraying. Evenings, silent meals, her French attendants guarding secrets of a usurped throne. Henry's men watch, assessing her worth, pawn or prisoner. Psychological chains tighten, praise for silence, isolation for questions. A servant's defiance, crushed by execution, silences hope. The truth, hidden in destroyed records, reveals a world where children were pawns, their suffering a sacred offering to gods and kings. Isabella's role as peace's symbol is a fading dream, her fate tied to Henry's ambition, her childhood a casualty of a crown's brutal arithmetic. Iron bars cast shadows across Isabella's tower chamber, where she sits 10 years old, clutching a faded French doll. The air is thick with dust and dread, her once regal gowns now threadbare. Henry's men in red rose livery guard her every move, their eyes cold as the stone walls. Richard's fate is a ghost. Rumors whisper of his death in Pontefract Castle, starved or strangled, his kindness to her a fading memory. You, a priest, see her poise crack, her dark eyes searching for meaning in a world that's betrayed her. Her French ladies whisper of France's outrage, urging her to remain a queen, but their voices tremble. Henry's court sees her as a relic of a failed reign. The coronation's cheers are gone, replaced by the clank of chains and the city's restless hum. Medieval elites mastered this cruelty, discarding children like Isabella when their value waned. The church was their accomplice, priests like you sanctifying child marriages with prayers, their rituals hiding the theft of youth. Suppressed chronicles, burned to ash, tell of girls wed young, their lives erased to protect royal secrets. Religion was a weapon, its masses cloaking exploitation, clergy preaching submission to break spirits. Nobles traded young brides for power, their psychological control relentless. Children molded to accept suffering as divine duty. The elite's corruption was a machine, grinding innocence into thrones, their gods as silent as the graves they filled. Isabella's days are a prison of fear. Dawn, lessons in silence, her voice stifled to avoid Henry's wrath. Midday, prayers in a chapel where candles mock her hope. Evenings, guarded meals, her French attendants shielding her from hostile whispers. Henry visits, his gaze calculating, will she be a bargaining chip or a liability? Psychological chains bind her. Praise for compliance, isolation for defiance. A servant's whispered revolt, crushed by exile, warns of resistance's cost. The truth, hidden in lost scrolls, reveals a system where children were currency, their suffering a sacred right to appease gods and kings. Isabella's role as peace's symbol is a broken promise, her fate tied to a usurper's ambition, her childhood a casualty of power's relentless hunger. The tower's gloom swallows Isabella's chamber, where she sits 10, her small hands tracing the worn edges of a French prayer book. The clank of guards' armor echoes, Henry's red rose livery a constant shadow. Rumors of Richard's death, murdered in captivity, haunt her, his gentle smile a ghost in her mind. You, a priest, see her eyes, once bright, now hollowed by betrayal. Her French ladies urge her to maintain dignity, but their whispers falter. Henry's court debates her fate, return her to France or keep her as leverage. She's no queen now, but a prisoner, her coronation's roses wilted, her youth a chain in a game of thrones. The city beyond hums with unrest, and she senses her fragility in this shifting world. Medieval power thrived on such betrayals, discarding children like Isabella when their purpose faded. The church was complicit, priests blessing child marriages as divine, their altars hiding broken lives. Suppressed chronicles, lost to time, reveal girls wed at 6, their names erased to shield royal sins. Religion was a tool, its rituals sanctifying exploitation, clergy preaching submission to crush spirits. Nobles used young brides to forge alliances, their psychological control relentless. Children taught to see pain as duty, their voices silenced by divine decree. The elite's corruption was absolute. The tower's shadows cling to Isabella's chamber where she sits, barely 11, her frail form hunched over a tattered French doll, its stitches fraying like her hope. The clank of Henry's guards, their red rose livery a stark warning, echoes through barred windows. Richard's death, starved or strangled in Pontefract's dungeons, is no longer rumor but a crushing truth, his paternal kindness a fading dream. You, a priest, see her eyes, once curious, now etched with dread, sensing her fate hangs on Henry's whims. Her French ladies whisper of France's demands for her return, but their voices tremble. Henry's court sees her as a pawn, her youth a tool or a threat. The coronation's roses and cheers are ghosts, replaced by the city's restless hum, a prelude to war or betrayal. Medieval elites discarded children like Isabella when thrones shifted, their innocence a currency spent and forgotten. The church was their accomplice, priests like you sanctifying child marriages with hollow prayers, their rituals masking the theft of youth. Suppressed chronicles, burned to ash, reveal girls wed young, their lives erased to protect royal secrets. Religion was a weapon, its masses cloaking exploitation, clergy preaching submission to break spirits. Nobles traded young brides for power, their psychological control relentless. Children molded to accept suffering as divine duty, their voices silenced by divine decree. The elite's corruption was a machine, grinding innocence into thrones, their gods as silent as the graves they filled. Isabella's days are a suffocating prison. Dawn, forced silence, her words stifled to avoid Henry's wrath. Midday, prayers in a chapel where candles mock her fading faith. Evenings, guarded meals, her French attendants shielding her from hostile whispers. Henry's rare visits are cold, his gaze weighing her value, leverage against France or a liability to discard. Psychological chains bind her, praise for compliance, isolation for defiance. A servant's whispered revolt, crushed by public execution, silences hope. The truth, hidden in lost scrolls, reveals a system where children were currency, their suffering a sacred right to appease gods and kings. Isabella's role as peace's symbol is a shattered illusion, her fate tied to a usurper's ambition, her childhood a casualty of power's merciless hunger. The tower's damp walls close in, a tomb for Isabella's fading spirit. At 11 she clutches a worn prayer book, its pages a lifeline to a France she'll never see again. Henry's guards, their red rose livery a constant threat, watch her every move. Richard's murder, confirmed by whispers of a starved corpse in Pontefract, haunts her, his gentle smile a ghost that can't save her. You, a priest, see her eyes, hollowed by betrayal, searching for meaning in a world that's cast her aside. Her French ladies, loyal but powerless, urge her to endure, but their fear mirrors hers. Henry's court debates her fate, a bargaining chip or a forgotten queen. The coronation's roses are dust, the cheers drowned by the city's restless pulse, a prelude to a future she can't escape. She's no longer a symbol of peace, but a relic of a failed reign, her childhood buried in a game of thrones. This was medieval power's dark heart. Children like Isabella sacrificed for ambition, their lives erased to protect dynasties. The church was complicit, priests like you blessing child marriages as divine, their altars hiding broken spirits. Suppressed chronicles, lost to time, reveal countless girls wed young, their names burned to shield royal sins. Religion was a tool, its rituals sanctifying exploitation, clergy preaching submission to crush souls. Nobles traded innocence for power, their psychological control relentless. Children taught to see pain as duty, their voices silenced by divine decree. The elite's corruption built empires on graves, their gods as merciless as their greed. This truth, once known, scars the soul, revealing powers wrought across centuries. You've descended this abyss, bearer of forbidden knowledge. Isabella's fate, returned to France at 12, her queenship erased, echoes in every silenced voice, every buried grave. This truth haunts, reshaping how you see thrones and temples. If you dare carry this weight, hit subscribe to join those who see history's shadows. Comment "I've seen the abyss" to seal your vow, and share this secret to pass the forbidden flame. But beware, these truths once spoken cling like damp rot, a whisper from graves that never rest, binding you to a history that forever alters the soul.